My husband left his credit card statement open on our shared laptop. One purchase, a diamond necklace worth $4,300. My birthday had passed months ago. Our anniversary wasn't for another 6 months. That night, he claimed he was working late, again. That's when I knew. After 15 years of building a life together, of managing our finances meticulously, of being the responsible one, while Nathan chased one business opportunity after another, he was planning to leave me. Not just leave me, but leave me financially ruined. Little did he know, I'd been preparing for this moment for nearly a year. The password-protected folder on my work computer labeled Contingency Plan wasn't paranoia after all. When Nathan eventually walked out 3 months later, debt notices in his wake and lipstick on his collar, the look on his face when his access cards were declined and accounts emptied was worth every moment of heartbreak I'd endured. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The scattered papers on our kitchen island told a story Nathan didn't realize I could read. Loan applications, credit increase requests, account statements hastily shoved into a folder when I walked in. I'm Rebecca Chen, financial analyst at Meridian Partners, and I've spent the last 12 years helping wealthy clients protect their assets. The irony wasn't lost on me as I stood there, coffee cooling in my hand, seeing the evidence of my husband's betrayal laid out in Helvetica and numbers. Working on something? I asked, keeping my voice light. The way Nathan startled, then swept the papers into his messenger bag, told me everything. Just some investment opportunities, he replied, flashing that charming smile that had once made my heart skip. Nothing for you to worry about. And there it was, the dismissal, the subtle suggestion that finances were beyond my understanding, despite my literal career managing high-net-worth portfolios. In 15 years of marriage, Nathan had never fully acknowledged my financial expertise, preferring to chase his dreams of entrepreneurial success while I quietly maintained our stability. Anything promising? I pressed, sliding onto a bar stool. Actually, yes. This could be the big one, Becky. His eyes lit up with that familiar enthusiasm. Jim's connected me with some investors for the app. They're talking serious funding. Jim, his college roommate who'd been involved in 3 MLM schemes in the past decade. The app, Nathan's latest venture, a social platform for amateur chefs that was indistinguishable from dozens already on the market. That's wonderful, I said, the lie smooth on my tongue. Nathan kissed my cheek, grabbing his keys. Don't wait up. Meeting potential investors tonight. As the door closed behind him, I opened my laptop. The banking notification confirmed what I already knew. Another $7,000 transferred from our joint savings to his personal account. The third such transfer in 2 months. Our savings, built primarily through my careful management and contributions, was being systematically drained. The first suspicious transaction had appeared 11 months ago. A weekend charge at the Lakeside Hotel downtown when Nathan was supposedly at a business conference in Denver. Then came the unexplained cash withdrawals, the increase in business, dinners, and the new cologne I never commented on. Classic signs, obvious in retrospect. What Nathan didn't realize was that after the first hotel charge, I had begun my own careful project. Not confrontation, information gathering. I'd learned long ago that in finance, knowledge was protection. So instead of accusations, I opened a separate account at a different bank, calculated exactly what percentage of our assets were rightfully mine based on contributions, and began the meticulous process of securing my future. My desk at Meridian Partners became command central for Operation Protect Rebecca. Between client meetings and investment reviews, I documented every financial contribution I'd made to our marriage. Mortgage payments primarily covered by my salary while Nathan pursued his startups. The student loans I'd paid off for both of us. The careful investments that had grown our net worth. investments Nathan had often dismissed as too conservative. "You look stressed," Amanda remarked one afternoon, leaning against my office doorway. As the firm's senior advisor and my closest friend, she noticed everything. "Just focused," I replied, minimizing the spreadsheet detailing Nathan's increasing financial deceptions. "Nathan still working on that app?" she asked, her tone carefully neutral. Amanda had never been Nathan's biggest fan, particularly after watching me make excuses for his financial imprudence for years. "Among other things?" I said, then hesitated. "Amanda, have you ever helped a client prepare for a divorce they knew was coming?" Her eyebrows shot up, but to her credit, she stepped into my office and closed the door without a word. For the next hour, I outlined my suspicions and the evidence I'd gathered, the financial infidelities that pointed to something deeper, the preparations I'd been making. "You're doing the right thing," she said finally. "Protecting yourself isn't vindictive. It's necessary." "I still feel like I'm being paranoid sometimes," I admitted. "Like maybe there's an explanation." Amanda's expression softened. "Becky, you're a financial analyst. You follow the evidence. What would you tell a client facing these same numbers?" She was right, of course. The numbers told a clear story, one I'd been reluctant to fully accept. That night, I arrived home to find Nathan already there, cooking dinner, something he did only when he wanted something or felt guilty. "You're home early," I remarked, setting down my bag. "Thought we could use a night together," he said, stirring something that smelled like his signature pasta sauce. "We've both been so busy lately." Something in his manner set off warning bells. The careful casualness, the calculated affection. I accepted the glass of wine he offered, watching him over the rim. "How's the Hamilton account going?" he asked, referencing a major client he knew I'd been courting. "Just signed today, actually," I said, the satisfaction of the professional win momentarily displacing my marital concerns. "That's my girl," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Always bringing in the big fish." The compliment should have warmed me. Instead, it felt like being patted on the head. I'd secured a $30 million portfolio that would generate substantial fees for our firm and advance my career. Yet Nathan's acknowledgement felt perfunctory. "We should celebrate," he continued, serving the pasta with a flourish. "Maybe that trip to Bali we've been talking about? I could use your bonus to book it." And there it was. My bonus, which hadn't even been determined yet, was already being allocated in his mind. For a trip we'd discussed once, years ago, before Nathan's string of failed ventures had adjusted our financial reality. "Let's see what the bonus actually is before making plans," I said carefully. "Besides, I was thinking of investing it in the Russell property, a small apartment building I'd been eyeing as a long-term investment, one that could provide rental income for decades." Nathan's enthusiasm dimmed. "Always the practical one," he said, the criticism evident beneath the light tone. "But we need to live a little, Becky. Success means nothing if you don't enjoy it." The irony of being lectured about success by a man whose business ventures had all failed wasn't lost on me. But I simply smiled and changed the subject, filing away this conversation as further evidence of our fundamental incompatibility. Later that night, as Nathan slept beside me, I slipped out of bed and into our home office. His laptop was closed but not locked. Nathan had always been careless with security, another point of contention between us. I opened it, the blue light, illuminating my face as I navigated to his email. I wasn't proud of this moment, this invasion of privacy. But something deeper than suspicion was driving me now. Self-preservation. The folder labeled Melissa confirmed everything. Emails spanning months, plans made, promises of a new life together once he sorted out his situation. Most damning were the financial discussions, Nathan detailing how he would extract maximum resources from our marriage before leaving. Melissa suggesting ways to hide assets. both of them calculating how my bonus and our joint accounts could fund their fresh start. "She has no idea," Nathan had written, always too busy with spreadsheets to notice what's happening right in front of her. The cold clarity that washed over me in that moment was unlike anything I'd experienced before. Not just the confirmation of betrayal, but the realization that the man I'd built a life with saw me not as a partner, but as a resource to be exploited. My financial acumen, far from being respected, was being weaponized against me. I closed the laptop, returned to bed, and lay awake until dawn. Nathan's steady breathing beside me a metronome counting down the final hours of our marriage. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 3 years. Not because I was emotionally devastated, that would come later, but because I had work to do. Strategic work, the kind I excelled at. First call, my attorney, Catherine Baxter, who specialized in high-conflict divorces. I'd consulted her 2 months earlier, hypothetically, and she'd provided a roadmap for protection. "It's time," I told her simply. "I'll prepare the paperwork," she replied, no questions asked. "Remember what we discussed about communications and documentation?" Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Next, the bank. Not our regular branch where Nathan occasionally charmed the managers, but the downtown location where Javier Torres, head of private banking and a former client, knew the value I brought to any table. "Rebecca," he greeted me, warmly. "What brings you to my office instead of calling?" "I need to discuss some sensitive financial adjustments," I said, my professional demeanor firmly in place despite the turmoil beneath. "And I prefer to leave no digital trail." For the next hour, we restructured my financial life. The separate accounts I'd already established were fortified. Automatic transfers from joint accounts were halted. Credit cards were secured against unauthorized increases. Most importantly, documentation of all transactions for the past 5 years was compiled, showing clearly which assets were marital and which were solely mine. "May I ask what prompted this comprehensive review?" Javier inquired as we concluded. "Risk management," I replied simply. "It's what I do." The next 2 weeks passed in a strange parallel reality. On the surface, Nathan and I continued our usual routines, he increasingly absent for meetings, me focused on work and secretly executing my protection plan. I maintained a pleasant facade, even as I methodically separated our lives. I transferred my personal items of value to a small storage unit. I documented the state of our home and possessions. I collected evidence of Nathan's communications with Melissa. I met with my firm's partners to secure my professional position against any potential fallout. Throughout it all, Nathan noticed nothing, or chose to notice nothing. His own preparations for departure consumed him, his attention fixed on his exit strategy rather than my unusual activities. The catalyzing moment came, appropriately enough, during a dinner with my colleagues to celebrate the Hamilton account. Nathan had insisted on attending, something he rarely did for my professional events. "I wouldn't miss celebrating my wife's success," he'd said, adjusting his tie in the mirror. The tie I'd bought him for his birthday 3 years ago, now worn for the first time. The restaurant was upscale, the kind that required reservations weeks in advance. My team had secured a private room, and as champagne flowed, the conversation turned to the complex negotiation that had won the account. Rebecca identified tax advantages the client hadn't considered. Daniel, my boss, explained to the table. Her analysis of their portfolio restructuring options literally caused their CFO to ask if we could poach her. Laughter rippled around the table. I smiled, accepting the professional acknowledgement with the quiet confidence that had become my trademark. "She's always been good with little details," Nathan interjected, his hand landing possessively on my shoulder. Though sometimes I think she misses the forest for the trees. A subtle shift occurred in the atmosphere. My colleagues, sophisticated financial professionals who respected my work, exchanged glances. The Hamilton restructuring will generate approximately $2 million in additional annual returns while reducing their tax exposure by 14%, Amanda stated flatly. That's not a little detail. It's why they moved their entire portfolio to us. Nathan's smile tightened. Of course. I just meant Becky sometimes gets so wrapped up in the numbers she forgets the human element. Right, honey? All eyes turned to me. In that moment, watching Nathan attempt to diminish my professional accomplishment in front of the very people who genuinely valued my expertise, something crystallized. This wasn't just about his affair or his financial deceptions. This was about a fundamental lack of respect that had always existed in our marriage. Actually, I said calmly, meeting his gaze directly, the human element is precisely why the Hamilton family chose us. They need those returns to fund their daughter's medical treatments. The numbers aren't abstract. They're literal lifelines. Nathan's hand slipped from my shoulder. The conversation moved on, but something had shifted between us. The pretense was cracking. Later that night, as we drove home in silence, Nathan finally spoke. You embarrassed me in front of your colleagues. I kept my eyes on the road. How so? Contradicting me like that, making me look uninformed. Were you informed about the Hamilton account? I asked mildly. That's not the point, he snapped. We're supposed to present a united front. I pulled into our driveway and turned off the engine, finally looking at him directly. Is that what you were doing with Melissa at the Lakeside Hotel last Tuesday? Presenting a united front? The color drained from his face. For once, Nathan was speechless. I know everything, I continued, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. The affair, the financial transfers, the plans you've been making, all of it. Becky, I can explain. No, I interrupted. You really can't. But here's what's going to happen next. I've filed for divorce. You'll be served tomorrow. I've already secured my separate assets and documented your misappropriation of joint funds. The house security codes have been changed, and your access to our accounts has been frozen. Nathan's expression transformed from shock to anger. You can't do that. Half of everything is mine. Correct, I nodded. Half. Not the 70% you've been systematically transferring. Not my inheritance that you attempted to leverage for your app development. Not my retirement accounts that you tried to borrow against last month. His eyes widened at the specific details I referenced. How did you? I'm a financial analyst, Nathan. Following money trails is what I do professionally. Did you really think I wouldn't notice? Or did you just assume I'd be too emotionally devastated to protect myself when you left? The silence between us thickened as Nathan processed that. His carefully constructed exit plan had been anticipated and countered before he could execute it. Where am I supposed to go? He finally asked, the entitlement in his tone almost comical given the circumstances. I believe Melissa has a very comfortable condo downtown, I replied, gathering my purse. Though I'm not sure how comfortable she'll be when she realizes you won't be arriving with the financial resources you promised. As I stepped out of the car, leaving Nathan sitting there stunned, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Not because I'd won some marital battle, but because I'd finally acknowledged my own value, both literally and figuratively. Inside, I poured myself a glass of wine and sent a single text to Amanda. It's done. Her reply came instantly. Your office guest room is ready if needed. Proud of you. But I had no intention of leaving. This house, bought primarily with my down payment, maintained by my salary while Nathan pursued his dreams, was mine in all the ways that mattered. I wouldn't be the one displaced by his betrayal. An hour later, the doorbell rang. Nathan stood, there, expression shifting between anger and calculation. "We need to talk about this." "We really don't," I replied, not stepping aside to let him in. "The time for talking was before you started planning your exit strategy with Melissa. Before you began siphoning our joint assets. Before you dismissed my financial expertise even as you exploited it." "This isn't like you, Becky," he said, his tone softening into the persuasive charm I'd once found irresistible. "We've been together 15 years. We can work through this. I made a mistake." "A mistake is a single poor decision," I interrupted. "What you did was execute a calculated plan over months. You were going to leave me financially devastated while portraying yourself as the victim of a cold, career-focused wife. The emails to Melissa made that very clear." His face hardened. "You hacked my email? That's illegal." I almost laughed at his attempt to shift blame. "No, Nathan. You left your email open on our shared laptop multiple times. But please, by all means, pursue that angle with the court. I'm sure a judge would be fascinated by the contents of those communications." For a moment, I saw something dangerous flash in his eyes, the cornered desperation of a man who'd always managed to charm or manipulate his way out of consequences, suddenly facing a situation he couldn't control. "You'll regret this," he said, quietly. "When the emotional satisfaction fades, you'll realize what you've thrown away." I studied him, this man I'd shared my life with, seeing him clearly perhaps for the first time. "What I've thrown away is the illusion that I needed to minimize myself to accommodate your ego. That my financial stability was a resource for you, to exploit, rather than a skill to be respected. That love means endlessly giving, without reciprocation." I closed the door, engaged the new locks, and returned to my wine. Outside, I heard Nathan's car start and drive away. The house felt different already, lighter somehow, as if the constant weight of maintaining an unbalanced relationship had been physically present in the rooms. My phone buzzed with a message from Catherine. "He's been served. Brace for reaction." I didn't need to brace. For the first time in years, possibly in our entire relationship, I felt completely centered in my own worth. The financial security I'd established wasn't just about money. It was about reclaiming my agency, about refusing to be victimized by someone who had viewed my success as something to leverage rather than celebrate. Tomorrow would bring challenges. Nathan wouldn't surrender easily. Men like him rarely did. There would be attempts to portray me as cold, calculating, unreasonable. The narrative of the blindsided husband betrayed by his career-obsessed wife was already forming in his mind. I was certain. But narratives required evidence, and I had methodically secured the truth. Every financial document, every email, every transfer and withdrawal. The story told by those records was unambiguous, and it was a story I was no longer willing to let Nathan rewrite. I opened my laptop and navigated to the folder labeled Contingency Plan. It was time to rename it. After a moment's reflection, I typed New Beginning and pressed Enter. The morning after confronting Nathan brought a strange sense of calm. I awoke early, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen island reviewing notes for my 9 a.m. client meeting. The normalcy felt surreal after the previous night's revelations, but focusing on work had always been my anchor during turbulent times. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "We need to talk. This isn't over." I didn't respond. There was nothing left to discuss, only legal proceedings to navigate. At Meridian Partners, I moved through my day with practiced professionalism. If colleagues noticed anything different, they attributed it to the Hamilton account success. Only Amanda knew the truth, catching my eye during the morning briefing with a subtle nod of support. "Ms. Chen?" My assistant Sarah appeared at my office door after lunch. "There's a delivery for you." The arrangement of red roses was extravagant, the card bearing Nathan's handwriting. 15 years deserves a conversation, not a legal notice. Please call me N. I handed the flowers to Sarah. These would look lovely in the reception area, don't you think? Her eyes widened slightly at my dismissal of what was obviously a personal gesture, but she nodded and carried them away. I returned to my analysis of a client's portfolio diversification options, the numbers providing comforting clarity amid my personal chaos. When my office phone rang at 3:42 p.m., I wasn't surprised to see Nathan's cell number on the display. After 4 rings, it went to voicemail. He called back immediately. Again, I let it ring. By the 3rd attempt, I asked Sarah to hold all calls unless they were from clients. At 5:15 p.m., as I was preparing to leave, Daniel stopped by my office. "Rebecca, everything all right?" Nathan was in the lobby earlier, seemed pretty agitated. Security didn't let him up since he's not on your approved visitor list. The information startled me. Nathan had never visited my office uninvited before. "Everything's fine," I assured Daniel. "Personal matter being handled. I appreciate security following protocol." Daniel studied me for a moment. "If you need anything, schedule adjustments, time off, just say the word. The Hamilton account puts you in a strong position here." His subtle reminder of my professional value provided unexpected comfort. "Thank you. For now, work is exactly what I need." I waited an additional 30 minutes before leaving, using the time to email Catherine an update on Nathan's attempts to contact me. Her response was immediate. "Standard escalation. Document everything. Use the side exit tonight." Following her advice, I avoided the main lobby, exiting through the parking garage instead. As I approached my car, a figure stepped from behind a concrete pillar. "Seriously, Becky? Dodging me at your office?" Nathan's voice echoed in the cavernous space. "That's pretty childish, don't you think?" I kept my expression neutral, though my pulse accelerated. "Following me to my workplace is inappropriate. All communication should go through our attorneys now." He stepped closer, blocking my path to the driver's door. "Our attorneys? Listen to yourself. 15 years together, and suddenly we're speaking through lawyers?" "The time frame doesn't change the facts," I replied, maintaining my composure. "Please move so I can access my car." "Not until you agree to talk like reasonable adults," he insisted, his charm shifting toward impatience. "You can't just make unilateral decisions about our marriage, our finances." "That's exactly what you were planning to do," I interrupted, finally allowing a hint of emotion to surface. "The only difference is that I acted first." Nathan's expression transformed, the mask of injured husband slipping to reveal calculation beneath. "You have no idea what you're talking about." "Account number 8734291, I stated flatly. "Opened at First National 7 months ago. Current balance $43,450. Transferred in increments from our joint savings. Lakeside Hotel, 6 separate visits. The diamond necklace from Harrington's Jewelers, size 16 inches. Not my size, by the way. Should I continue?" The color drained from his face, replaced by an anger I rarely witnessed. "You've been spying on me." "I've been protecting myself," I corrected him. "A necessary precaution, as it turns out." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "You have no idea what you've done. Those accounts, those transfers, there are consequences you haven't considered." Something in his tone sent a warning signal through me. Not just the anger of a man caught betraying his wife, but something more specific. "What kind of consequences?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I recognized from moments when his schemes began unraveling. "Those funds weren't just for personal use. There are investors expecting returns, commitments I've made." Realization dawned slowly. "You weren't just preparing to leave me. You were using our joint assets as investment capital without my knowledge." He didn't deny it. "The opportunity was time-sensitive. I knew you'd say no. You always say no to the big plays. But this one's different, Becky. The returns could set us up for life. What returns? I asked, though I already suspected the answer. What exactly did you invest in? Nathan's expression shifted to the enthusiastic confidence I'd seen launch a dozen failed ventures. Crypto Fusion. It's a revolutionary blockchain platform that— Stop. I held up my hand, unable to bear another breathless description of yet another questionable investment. How much did you commit? He hesitated. How much, Nathan? 300,000, he finally admitted. Initial seed round, private offering before it goes public. We got in at ground level. The amount struck me like a physical blow. Nearly our entire joint savings accumulated over 15 years of careful planning, mostly on my part. Without consulting me, without my consent. I was going to tell you after the first returns came in, he insisted, when you could see the potential instead of just the risk. And Melissa, were you going to tell me about her too once the returns came in? I kept my voice steady despite the anger building inside me. Or was the plan to leave once you had access to the profits? Nathan had the decency to look momentarily ashamed, but he recovered quickly. That's not fair. Melissa has nothing to do with this investment. She has everything to do with your plans for our money, I countered. The emails made that quite clear. His expression hardened. You need to transfer those funds back to our joint account. Now. People are counting on that money. Not possible, I replied. The accounts have been frozen pending divorce proceedings. You froze. Nathan stepped back as if I'd struck him. You don't understand what you've done. These aren't typical investors, Becky. They don't take kindly to commitment failures. A chill ran through me as I processed the implication. What exactly are you saying? I'm saying unfreeze the accounts, he insisted, lowering his voice. Return the money you transferred out, for both our sakes. The threat hung in the air between us. In 15 years of marriage, through all of Nathan's schemes and failures, I'd never heard this note in his voice. Genuine fear beneath the anger. I need to go, I said, stepping around him to reach my car door. This isn't a game, he called after me as I slid behind the wheel. You need to fix this, Becky. Today. I locked the doors and started the engine, watching in the rearview mirror. As Nathan stood motionless in the parking garage, a figure increasingly distant as I drove away. At home, I double-checked the security system before calling Catherine to report the encounter. Her response was immediate and firm. Document everything, he said. Forward me any texts or emails about these investors. And Rebecca, if you feel unsafe at any point, don't hesitate to involve the police. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen island, the granite cool beneath my fingertips as I processed this new information. Nathan hadn't just been planning to leave me emotionally bereft. He'd potentially entangled our finances with people who operated outside legal boundaries. My phone buzzed with an incoming text from an unknown number. You must be Rebecca. We should talk about Nathan's situation. Meet tomorrow? I took a screenshot before blocking the number, forwarding the image to Catherine with a brief explanation. Her response was a single word. Police. Within an hour, 2 officers were sitting in my living room as I explained the situation. My pending divorce, Nathan's unauthorized investments, and now the ambiguous message from a stranger. They took notes, faces professionally neutral. Financial disputes during divorce are common, ma'am, the older officer explained. But threats, even implied ones, are taken seriously. We'll document this incident and increase patrols in your neighborhood for the next few days. After they left, I moved methodically through the house, checking window locks and closing blinds. The home that had once been my sanctuary now felt exposed, its familiar corners harboring new shadows. My phone rang again. Amanda this time. Just checking in, she said when I answered. How are you holding up? It's complicated, I admitted. the understatement almost making me laugh. Nathan's financial decisions were apparently worse than I realized. I explained the situation, each detail making my friend's silence on the other end more pronounced. "You need to stay with me," she finally declared. "At least for a few days. This doesn't sound like typical divorce drama." "I appreciate the offer, but I'm not leaving my home," I replied firmly. "The security system is excellent, the police are aware, and honestly, I refuse to be displaced because of Nathan's poor choices." Amanda sighed. "At least promise you'll call immediately if anything else happens, day or night." "Promise." I agreed, grateful for her concern. That night, I slept fitfully, waking at every house-settling noise and distant car engine. By morning, exhaustion had crystallized into resolve. I wouldn't live in fear in my own home. Whatever Nathan had done, whatever consequences now loomed, I would face them with the same analytical clarity I brought to my professional challenges. At work, an email from Catherine awaited me. "Court date expedited due to financial concerns. Hearing scheduled for next Tuesday. Please clear your calendar." I forwarded the information to Daniel, requesting the day off without explanation. His reply was supportive but included a request to meet before the end of day. When I entered his office that afternoon, his expression was unusually serious. "Rebecca, is there something I should know about Nathan's involvement with crypto fusion?" The question blindsided me. "How do you know about that?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, studying me carefully. "Because their representative, Victor Mercer, called asking to speak with you. When I explained you weren't available to unknown callers, he mentioned something about investment funds and your husband's commitments." My stomach tightened. "What exactly did he say?" "Nothing explicit," Daniel replied. "But there was an undercurrent I didn't like, as if he were trying to establish some connection to you through the firm." I took a deep breath, weighing my options. Daniel wasn't just my boss. He was a mentor who had championed my career for years. If Crypto Fusion was attempting to reach me through Meridian, he deserved to know why. "I'm in the process of divorcing Nathan," I began, the words still strange on my tongue. "During our separation, I discovered he invested substantial amounts of our joint savings in this Crypto Fusion venture without my knowledge or consent." Daniel's expression darkened. "And now they're trying to contact you directly, bypassing legal channels." "It appears so," I confirmed. "My attorney is handling it, and the police are aware of the situation." "Police?" His eyebrows rose. "Rebecca, if this involves potential criminal activity, the firm needs to know. Not just for your protection, but for our clients." He was right, of course. My personal crisis was beginning to spill into my professional space, potentially compromising the reputation I'd spent years building. "The investments Nathan made may involve questionable parties," I admitted. "I don't have details yet, but there have been concerning communications." Daniel nodded slowly, processing this information. "Here's what we're going to do. First, security will be instructed that no one associated with Crypto Fusion or Nathan is allowed access to this building. Second, all your client meetings for the next week will include a junior associate, for documentation purposes only." "That's not necessary," I protested, uncomfortable with the implication that I needed monitoring. "It's standard procedure when a team member faces external pressures that might affect client interactions," Daniel countered smoothly. "And third, I'm authorizing additional legal support through the firm if needed. Your personal situation has professional implications now, and Meridian protects its own." The support was unexpected and touching. "Thank you," I said simply. Daniel's expression softened slightly. "You're one of our strongest assets, Rebecca. Whatever's happening with Nathan and these Crypto Fusion people, don't handle it alone." As I left his office, my phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. "They're asking questions I can't answer. Need to meet. Tonight. Usual place, 7 p.m. Our usual place was Riverfront Park, where we'd often walk on weekend mornings discussing future plans over coffee. The memory of those seemingly intimate conversations now felt hollow, knowing what Nathan had been planning behind my back. I didn't respond to the text, forwarding it instead to Catherine, who replied immediately, "Do not meet him alone. If you feel you must speak with him, public location only. Bring a witness." The rest of the afternoon passed in a haze of professional obligations performed on autopilot. By 6:30 p.m., I had made my decision. I would meet Nathan, but not at the park, somewhere public, well-lit, with security cameras, and not alone. I called Amanda. "I need a favor." 20 minutes later, we sat at a corner table in the Grand Cafe, positioned with clear sightlines to all entrances and exits. The upscale restaurant in the lobby of the Westbrook Hotel was always crowded with business dinners at this hour. Perfect for a conversation that needed public witnesses but not eavesdroppers. Nathan arrived at 7:10 p.m., scanning the room before spotting me. His momentary relief at seeing me transformed to wariness when he noticed Amanda beside me. "This is private, Becky," he said without greeting, remaining standing beside our table. "Nothing about our situation is private anymore," I replied evenly. "Not after you involved outside parties in our finances. Amanda stays." He glanced between us, weighing his options, before sliding reluctantly into the seat across from me. Up close, I could see the strain of recent days etched on his face, stubble unevenly spread across his jaw, dark circles beneath eyes that darted nervously around the restaurant. "You look terrible," I observed, not unkindly. "That tends to happen when you're being pressured by investors and frozen out of your own accounts simultaneously," he replied, voice tight. Amanda signaled a waiter, ordering a round of sparkling water for the table. The mundane interaction seemed to irritate Nathan further. "This isn't a social gathering," he snapped. "We have serious issues to discuss." "Then discuss them," I said calmly. Nathan leaned forward, lowering his voice. "The people I committed our investment to are not typical venture capitalists. They operate in cryptocurrency for specific reasons, including minimal regulatory oversight." "Money laundering?" Amanda suggested bluntly. Nathan shot her an irritated glance before returning his attention to me. "Not exactly. But they have expectations about commitments being honored, and they're not interested in hearing about marital disputes." "That sounds very much like your problem, not Rebecca's," Amanda interjected. "It became her problem when she froze the accounts and redirected funds," Nathan countered. "Now they think I'm trying to cheat them." "Aren't you?" I asked quietly. "Wasn't that the plan all along? Use our savings as leverage to extract more from these investors, then disappear with Melissa once you had what you wanted?" Nathan had the grace to look momentarily ashamed. "It wasn't like that. The investment is real. The returns could be substantial." "Could be," I repeated. "Just like your food delivery app could have been revolutionary. Or your social media platform for pet owners could have been the next big thing. How many failed ventures am I supposed to fund before acknowledging the pattern?" "This is different," he insisted. "I've seen the technology. I've met the developers." "And Melissa?" I pressed. "Was she different too? Or just another venture you thought might yield better returns than your marriage?" Nathan's expression hardened. "Leave her out of this. This is about money, not emotions." "It's about trust," I corrected him, "and responsibility, both of which you violated." The waiter returned with our water, the interruption giving Nathan a moment to compose himself. When he spoke again, his voice had softened to the persuasive tone I recognized from countless financial discussions throughout our marriage. "Becky, I understand you're hurt. I made mistakes, serious ones. But these people are expecting their full investment by the end of week. If it doesn't arrive, there will be consequences for both of us." Amanda shifted beside me, but I kept my focus on Nathan. "What kind of consequences?" He glanced around before answering. They know where we live. They know where you work. They've made it clear they consider me responsible for delivering the full amount, regardless of personal circumstances. A chill ran through me, despite the restaurant's warm atmosphere. Are you saying they've threatened you? Not explicitly, Nathan admitted. But the implications were clear. These aren't people who give extensions or accept partial payments. Then you should go to the police, I suggested. Nathan laughed bitterly. And tell them what? That I voluntarily entered a cryptocurrency investment with people who may operate in legal gray areas, and now I can't fulfill my commitment because my wife froze our accounts? That would end well. He had a point, though I wasn't about to acknowledge it. What exactly are you asking me to do? Release the funds, he said immediately. Just temporarily. Let me complete this transaction, satisfy these investors, and then we can proceed with whatever divorce arrangements you want. The request was so transparently self-serving that I almost laughed. You're asking me to trust you with $300,000 after discovering you plan to leave me financially devastated while running off with another woman. Put so bluntly, even Nathan seemed to recognize the absurdity. When you put it that way, there is no other way to put it, I interrupted. The accounts remain frozen pending our court hearing next Tuesday. Whatever arrangements you made with these investors will have to wait. Nathan's facade of reasonable negotiation crumbled. You don't understand the position you're putting me in, he hissed, leaning closer. These people don't care about court dates or divorce proceedings. Neither do I replied steadily. My priority is protecting what remains of our joint assets until they can be legally divided. Your investment schemes are no longer my concern. He stared at me, searching for the accommodating wife who had funded his ventures without question for 15 years. That woman was gone, replaced by someone who recognized her own value and refused to compromise it any further. You've changed, he finally said, as if this explanation were the only way to make sense of my refusal. No, I corrected him. I've simply stopped pretending that your financial irresponsibility was somehow a character quirk I needed to accommodate rather than a fundamental incompatibility. Nathan pushed back from the table, his water untouched. This isn't over. Actually, Amanda interjected, it very much is. Rebecca has made her position clear. Any further attempts to pressure her could be considered harassment, which I'm sure your lawyer would advise against during divorce proceedings. He glared at her before turning back to me. Tuesday, then. I hope you're prepared for what happens next. As he walked away, weaving between dinner tables toward the exit, Amanda placed a hand on my arm. Are you all right? I realized I was gripping my water glass so tightly my knuckles had whitened. I will be, I assured her, releasing the glass. Once this is finally resolved. Do you think his concerns about these investors are legitimate? She asked. I considered the question carefully. Nathan had a history of exaggerating both opportunities and obstacles, particularly when trying to persuade me to fund his latest venture. But the fear in his eyes had seemed genuine. I'm not sure, I admitted. But I'm not risking our remaining assets based on vague threats from unnamed parties. Amanda nodded approvingly. Good. Now, you're staying with me tonight, and I won't take no for an answer. This time I didn't argue. The confrontation had left me drained, and the thought of returning to an empty house that might be under observation was unsettling. We paid for our untouched waters and left, Amanda insisting. We take her car rather than separating. As we drove to her downtown apartment, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Mrs. Chen, your husband's financial situation requires immediate resolution. Let's discuss options that benefit everyone. 24 hours. I showed Amanda the message without comment. Her expression darkened as she read it at a stoplight. Police, she said firmly. Tonight. Not tomorrow, not after the court hearing. Tonight. I nodded, already composing an email to Catherine with screenshots attached. Whatever Nathan had involved himself in was clearly escalating beyond typical investment pressure. At Amanda's apartment, a sleek one-bedroom in a secure building with doorman service, I finally allowed myself to acknowledge the stress of the past weeks. Sitting on her guest futon, I felt the carefully maintained composure of recent days begin to crack. What if he's right? I asked quietly. What if these people really do come after us because of the frozen accounts? Amanda sat beside me, her expression serious. Then we deal with it. But we deal with it through proper channels, legal representation, law enforcement, security measures, not by capitulating to threats. She was right, of course. The path forward wasn't through fear or compromise, but through the same methodical planning and protection I'd employed since discovering Nathan's betrayal. Get some rest, Amanda advised, handing me a spare set of pajamas. Tomorrow we'll contact building security at your house and at Meridian. We'll make sure the police have all communication records. We'll prepare for Tuesday's hearing with additional documentation about these threats. Her practical approach calmed me, reminding me that this situation, while stressful, was manageable with the right strategy. It was the same approach I took with complex client portfolios. Assess the risks, implement protections, proceed with clear objectives. That night, in the unfamiliar quiet of Amanda's spare room, I reviewed the path that had led me here. Not just Nathan's betrayal or his financial schemes, but my own awakening to patterns I had accepted for far too long. The dismissal of my financial expertise, even as Nathan relied on the stability it provided. The assumption that I would always be there to clean up his messes, fund his dreams, maintain our life while he pursued whatever captured his interest. In allowing those patterns to persist, I had been complicit in my own diminishment. The realization wasn't comfortable, but it was necessary. Part of the recalibration that had begun the moment I discovered the diamond necklace receipt and would continue long after the divorce was finalized. As I finally drifted toward sleep, my last conscious thought was not of fear or anger, but of determination. Whatever happened next, with Nathan, with these mysterious investors, with the legal proceedings ahead, I would face it from a position of clarity about my own worth, both financial and personal. The morning brought renewed resolve along with a development I hadn't anticipated. Catherine called while I was getting ready for work in Amanda's guest bathroom. Rebecca, I've received concerning information from the financial investigation. She began without preamble. The crypto fusion venture appears to be connected to several flags for potential money laundering. More importantly, the documentation Nathan provided to them listed assets far beyond your actual joint holdings. I gripped the edge of the sink, processing this information. What do you mean? He represented your combined net worth at nearly $2 million, Catherine explained, her voice professionally controlled despite the bombshell she was delivering, including equity in your home, your retirement accounts, and projected bonuses from Meridian. The room seemed to tilt slightly as the implications became clear. He was planning to access my personal accounts and professional assets. It appears so, Catherine confirmed, which explains the escalating pressure. These people believe there are substantial resources available beyond what Nathan has already committed. The betrayal felt physical, a hollow expansion in my chest that made breathing difficult. It wasn't just that Nathan had planned to leave. He had intended to strip me of everything, leveraging assets I had built independently to fund his exit, with Melissa. I've notified the Financial Crimes Unit, Catherine continued. This moves beyond divorce proceedings into potential criminal misrepresentation. You should anticipate investigators contacting you directly. Thank you, I managed, my mind racing to integrate this new information with yesterday's confrontation. Nathan's desperation made more sense now. He wasn't just facing pressure over the frozen joint accounts, but the exposure of his broader deception. After hanging up, I leaned against Amanda's kitchen counter, explaining the situation as she prepared coffee. He told them he had access to your retirement accounts, she repeated, incredulous. That's not just unethical, it's potentially criminal. Apparently so, I confirmed, the shock giving way to cold anger. And now they're pressuring him for assets he doesn't control and never did. Amanda handed me a steaming mug, her expression grim. You can't go to work today, not with this escalating. Part of me wanted to argue, to maintain the professional routine that had anchored me through recent chaos. But logic prevailed. You're right. I need to meet with Catherine in person, coordinate with the investigators. And stay somewhere. These people can't find you, Amanda added firmly. Not your house, not here since they might connect us through work. Somewhere unexpected. The suggestion triggered a memory. My cousin Elena's vacant condo in the suburbs, currently unoccupied while she worked overseas. I have an option, I assured her. Somewhere no one would think to look. The next hours passed in a flurry of arrangements. I called Daniel to request emergency personal leave, providing enough details to justify the absence without causing undue concern. Catherine arranged for a meeting with financial crimes investigators at her office that afternoon. Amanda insisted on driving me to all appointments, refusing to let me navigate the city alone while Nathan's cryptocurrency associates might be watching. At Catherine's office, the reality of Nathan's deception became even clearer as investigators walked me through documents he had provided to CryptoFusion representatives. This portfolio overview lists your personal retirement accounts as jointly accessible assets, a serious-faced investigator named Martinez explained, sliding a document across the polished conference table. And this projection includes anticipated bonuses from Meridian Partners as guaranteed income. I studied the papers, recognizing Nathan's characteristic optimistic financial projections, always assuming maximum potential returns, minimal tax implications, and perfect market conditions. But these went beyond optimism into outright fabrication. None of these accounts are jointly held, I confirmed, pointing to several line items. And these bonus projections are pure fiction. Meridian's compensation structure doesn't work this way. That's consistent with our preliminary findings, Martinez nodded. Mr. Chen appears to have significantly misrepresented both available assets and future income to secure his position with CryptoFusion. Catherine, seated beside me, asked the question I was hesitant to voice. What exactly is CryptoFusion, from your department's perspective? Martinez exchanged glances with his colleague before responding carefully. We believe it's a sophisticated washing operation for funds of questionable origin. The technology itself may be legitimate, but its primary purpose appears to be obscuring the source of substantial investments. Money laundering, Catherine translated bluntly. We're building that case, Martinez confirmed. Your husband's involvement complicates matters. Was he a knowing participant in illegal activity, or simply an overeager investor who misrepresented his financial position to gain entry? The question hung in the air, impossible for me to answer definitively. Nathan had always operated in gray areas financially, but outright criminal activity seemed beyond his usual bounds. Then again, I had never imagined he would attempt to leverage my personal assets without consent either. What happens now? I asked finally. We continue our investigation into CryptoFusion, Martinez explained. As for your immediate situation, we recommend security precautions. These organizations typically focus pressure on those they perceive as directly responsible, your husband in this case. But the misrepresentation of your joint assets puts you at potential risk as well. The meeting concluded with practical security recommendations and an agreement to share any further communications from either Nathan or unknown parties potentially connected to CryptoFusion. As we left Catherine's office, I felt both better, informed and more unsettled. What had begun as a painful but straightforward divorce had evolved into something potentially dangerous. Elena's condo still feels like the best option, I told Amanda as we drove away. It's in a secure building, in a suburb away from both our house and downtown, and no one in Nathan's circle has ever met my cousin. Amanda agreed, following my directions to the residential complex where Elena had purchased a small 2-bedroom as an investment property before accepting an international assignment. Using the emergency key Elena had left with me, we entered the sparsely furnished unit, its neutral decor and minimal personal touches making it feel appropriately anonymous. "I'll stay with you tonight," Amanda offered, surveying the space. "We can pick up essentials on the way back from your house. You'll need clothes and toiletries at minimum." The suggestion of returning home sent an unexpected surge of anxiety through me. "Is that safe?" "We'll make it quick," she assured me. "And I'll be with you the entire time. But you need your things, and any financial documents you haven't already secured should be moved somewhere safe." She was right, of course. Whatever happened next, with the divorce, with Nathan's cryptocurrency associates, with the criminal investigation now unfolding, I needed to be prepared. And that meant facing the home that no longer felt entirely safe. As we drove toward the house that evening, the setting sun casting long shadows across familiar streets, I steeled myself for whatever might await us there. Not just potential external threats, but the emotional weight of a space filled with 15 years of memories, now irrevocably altered by betrayal. What I didn't anticipate was the black luxury sedan parked directly in front of our driveway, its engine running, a silhouette visible behind tinted windows. "Keep driving," I instructed Amanda sharply. "Don't slow down." She complied without question, continuing past my house at a casual pace before turning at the next intersection. "Was that—" "I don't know," I admitted, heart pounding as I called Catherine's emergency line. "But I'm not waiting around to find out." Catherine answered on the second ring. "What's happened?" Her tone was all business, lawyer mode fully engaged. "Someone's watching my house," I explained, my voice steadier than I expected as Amanda navigated us through residential streets, putting distance between us and the suspicious vehicle. Black sedan, tinted windows, parked directly in front of our driveway. "Are you certain it wasn't a neighbor or delivery service?" Catherine asked, ever the pragmatist. "It was positioned to block access," I replied. "Engine running. Not exactly Amazon Prime behavior." There was a brief pause as Catherine processed this information. "Where are you now?" "Moving away from the area." I didn't attempt to approach the house. "Good," she said firmly. "I'm contacting the officers assigned to your case directly. They'll do a drive-by assessment. In the meantime, go somewhere public with security cameras. Mall, hotel, lobby, restaurant. Stay there until I call back." Amanda had already anticipated this direction, turning toward West Creek Mall without needing my guidance. "On our way to West Creek," I confirmed to Catherine. "Amanda's with me." "Perfect. I'll call within 30 minutes. After hanging up, I sat in tense silence as Amanda navigated evening traffic, my mind racing through possibilities. Was the car connected to cryptofusion? One of Nathan's attempts at intimidation, or simply a coincidence that my heightened state of alert had transformed into something sinister? "You're thinking too hard," Amanda commented, correctly reading my expression. "Whatever it is, we're handling it correctly." The mall parking garage offered anonymous shelter, our car just one of hundreds. Inside, we selected a busy coffee shop near the main entrance, positioned at a corner table with views of both the shop entrance and the mall corridor beyond. The mundane activity of shoppers provided strange comfort, everyday life continuing unaffected by the disruption consuming mine. 26 minutes after our call, Catherine's number appeared on my phone display. Officers found no vehicle matching your description, she reported without preamble, but they're maintaining periodic surveillance of the area for the next few hours. Relief mixed with lingering uncertainty. Could they have left that quickly? Possibly, Catherine acknowledged. Or your caution caused you to misinterpret something innocent. Either way, I don't recommend returning to the house tonight. I glanced at Amanda, who had heard enough of the conversation to understand. She nodded in silent agreement with Catherine's assessment. We weren't planning to, I assured her. I have alternative arrangements. Good. I've also received an update from Martinez, Catherine continued, shifting topics with professional efficiency. They've identified the principal investors behind Crypto Fusion, including connections to previous schemes with similar structures. Their focus remains on those individuals rather than participants like Nathan, but they want to interview him as soon as possible. The implication was clear. Nathan wasn't considered the mastermind, but rather another player, perhaps a willingly ignorant one, in a larger operation. Have they contacted him? I asked. They've made attempts, Catherine. Confirmed. So far, unsuccessful. A new worry surfaced. You don't think he'd run, do you? The question hung between us, laden with implications beyond our legal proceedings. If Nathan fled to avoid questioning about Crypto Fusion, it would complicate everything. Our divorce, the financial separation, potential criminal charges. Let's not speculate, Catherine advised. For now, focus on your immediate security. I'll coordinate with Martinez regarding any developments on their end. We still proceed with court on Tuesday as planned. After ending the call, I relayed the key points to Amanda, whose expression grew increasingly concerned. If he runs, she began. He won't, I interrupted, with more certainty than I felt. Nathan's always been convinced he can talk his way out of anything. Running would mean admitting defeat. Amanda seemed skeptical, but didn't argue. So, what's our next move? We still need to get your essential items. I considered our options. Returning to the house felt increasingly risky, not just because of the possible surveillance, but because of what Nathan might do as his situation grew more desperate. There's a 24-hour department store 10 minutes from Elena's condo, I decided. I can get necessities there for the next few days. Anything truly essential from the house can wait until we have more information. As we drove to the store, I mentally cataloged what I needed versus what could be replaced. Clothing, toiletries, basic medication, all easily purchased. Financial documents were already secured in digital formats, backed up to encrypted cloud storage only I could access. The few truly irreplaceable items, my grandmother's jewelry, family photographs, important mementos, were stored in a safety deposit box at my bank, moved there weeks earlier during my initial preparation for separation. You really did think of everything, Amanda observed as I methodically selected practical items in the store. Most people facing divorce don't have this level of foresight. Most people facing divorce haven't spent their professional lives anticipating financial worst-case scenarios, I replied, selecting a simple set of pajamas. And most don't discover their husband has potentially connected them to money laundering operations. The attempted humor fell flat, the reality too stark for levity. We completed our shopping in efficient silence, then headed to Elena's condo where Amanda helped me organize my temporary living space. I'll stay tonight, she offered, again, setting up linens on the living room sofa. After that, we can establish a rotation. Maybe Daniel can arrange for private security through the firm's service. The suggestion triggered an unexpected wave of emotion, not fear or grief, but profound gratitude for the support network I'd cultivated professionally while my personal life imploded. Thank you, I said simply, the words inadequate for the steadiness she'd provided. Amanda waved away my gratitude. You'd do the same for me. Now get some sleep. Tomorrow brings another day of Nathan's drama to manage. Despite exhaustion, sleep proved elusive that night. In the unfamiliar bedroom of Elena's condo, I found myself mentally retracing the path that had led to this moment. Not just Nathan's betrayal or the discovery of his financial deceptions, but the years of subtle dismissals and redirections that had preceded them. The way he'd positioned himself as the financial visionary while I was merely the practical calculator. The times he'd explained basic investment principles to me, a financial director, with the confidence of someone addressing a novice. The gradual erosion of my professional identity within our marriage, even as my career flourished outside, it. When sleep finally came, it brought fragmented dreams of numbers spiraling out of control, of bank vaults with changing combinations, of Nathan and Melissa laughing in Lakeside Hotel while surrounded by stacks of currency. I awoke to soft morning light filtering through unfamiliar curtains and the distant sound of Amanda preparing coffee in Elena's kitchen. For a brief, disorienting moment, I couldn't place myself in time or space. Then reality reasserted itself. The divorce, the cryptocurrency scheme, the watching car, the temporary refuge. My phone showed multiple missed calls from unknown numbers and a single text from Nathan. "We need to talk. Not about us, about staying safe." I forwarded the message to Catherine without responding, then joined Amanda in the kitchen. "Any developments?" she asked, handing me a mug of coffee. "Nathan's trying to establish contact," I replied, showing her the message. "Playing the protection angle now." Amanda frowned. "Classic manipulation. Create a threat, then offer protection from it. Except the threat might be real this time," I acknowledged reluctantly, "even if he's exaggerating for leverage." Before we could discuss further, my phone rang with Catherine's number. "I've been on with Martinez this morning," she began. "There's been a significant development. The Financial Crimes Unit executed search warrants at Crypto Fusion's registered office early today. Nathan was there." The news hit like cold water. "He was at their office? Why?" "Unclear at this point," Catherine replied. "He's currently being interviewed as a person of interest, not under arrest. But his presence at their headquarters at 6 a.m. raises obvious questions." My mind raced through possibilities, none of them reassuring. Was Nathan more deeply involved than we'd realized? Was he attempting to negotiate with them independently? Was he trying to recover documentation of his own misrepresentations? "How does this affect our court date?" I asked, focusing on the practical implications. "It complicates matters," Catherine admitted. "If Nathan is formally charged with anything related to Crypto Fusion, it could delay our proceedings. However, it might also strengthen our position regarding financial mismanagement and marital assets." After ending the call, I relayed the why information to Amanda, whose expression shifted from concern to indignation. "So, while you're hiding in your cousin's condo because of threats potentially connected to his cryptocurrency dealings, he's at their offices at dawn?" she summarized, incredulously. "That's either incredibly stupid or suggests he's more involved than we thought. Or he's desperately trying to resolve the situation before Tuesday's hearing," I suggested, attempting to view the situation objectively despite my personal stake. If he can convince them he'll deliver the promised funds somehow, he might believe he can still salvage both the investment and enough assets from our divorce to start over with Melissa. Amanda shook her head. "You're still giving him too much credit. The Nathan you're describing is calculating but ultimately rational. The Nathan who misrepresented your joint assets to potential money launderers is neither." Her bluntness struck home. I had indeed been applying rational frameworks to Nathan's increasingly irrational actions, perhaps out of habit from 15 years of translating his financial optimism into practical reality. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from an unknown number. "Your husband made promises he can't keep. But you can. Let's discuss. Palmer Hotel lobby, noon today." I stared at the message, its implications crystallizing with terrifying clarity. Crypto Fusion's representatives were now bypassing Nathan entirely, attempting to establish direct contact with me. The boundary between Nathan's poor decisions and my own safety had finally collapsed completely. I forwarded the message to both, Catherine and Martinez, before showing it to Amanda, whose face paled. "You're not going," she stated immediately. Not a question, but a declaration. "Of course not," I agreed. "But this confirms they know who I am, where I work, and possibly where I live. They're escalating from pressuring Nathan to direct contact. Catherine called back within minutes, her voice tight with controlled urgency. Martinez is sending officers to secure the Palmer Hotel lobby, but they need something from you first. Reply to the message. Ask for verification of who you're meeting. We need to confirm the connection to CryptoFusion. My hands were surprisingly steady as I typed, I need to know who I'm meeting before committing to anything. The response came almost immediately. Victor Mercer, Investment Director. Your husband mentioned your financial expertise might be valuable to our organization. I forwarded this message directly to Martinez's number, which Catherine had provided earlier. His response was prompt and direct. Do not engage further. We have confirmation. Security team en route to your location. The security team arrived 20 minutes later. Two plainclothes officers who introduced themselves as Detectives Williams and Ortega from the Financial Crimes Unit. They performed a thorough security assessment of Elena's condo building, established communication protocols, and outlined precautionary measures. We don't believe you're in immediate physical danger, Detective Williams explained, her manner professional but reassuring. Organizations like CryptoFusion typically avoid violence. It attracts unwanted attention. Their preferred methods are financial pressure and intimidation. That said, Detective Ortega added, we're taking their approach to you seriously. They've moved from pressuring your husband to direct contact, which indicates escalation. They coordinated with the building's security team, arranged for periodic patrol check-ins, and established a direct line of communication that bypassed standard dispatch channels. The comprehensive response should have been reassuring, but it only underscored the seriousness of the situation. What about Nathan? I asked as they prepared to leave. Is he still being interviewed? The detectives exchanged glances before Williams answered carefully. Mr. Chen provided a statement and was released. His attorney was present throughout. His attorney? I repeated, surprised. Nathan and I had used the same family lawyer for years for routine matters like wills and real estate transactions. I hadn't known he'd retained separate counsel. A Mr. Jeffries, Ortega confirmed, specialized in white-collar defense. The information wasn't directly relevant to my security, but it provided another piece of the evolving puzzle. Nathan had been preparing for potential legal challenges beyond our divorce, another contingency he'd arranged without my knowledge. After the detectives left, Amanda and I sat in silence for several minutes, absorbing the morning's developments. I need to go to work tomorrow, I finally said. I can't hide indefinitely, and Meridian has security protocols already in place. Amanda frowned. Is that wise? At least wait until after the court hearing. I shook my head. My entire strategy has been based on continuing my professional trajectory regardless of Nathan's chaos. I won't let these people disrupt that too. At least let me drive you, she insisted, and we should coordinate with Daniel about additional security measures. I agreed to these reasonable precautions, already mentally preparing for Tuesday's court date. Whatever happened with Nathan and CryptoFusion, the divorce proceedings represented a definitive step toward reclaiming my life. I wouldn't postpone that milestone unless absolutely necessary. The next morning brought unexpected clarity in the form of a formal email from Nathan's new attorney, Jerome Jeffries. In light of ongoing matters, my client wishes to propose an expedited settlement agreement regarding the dissolution of marriage. Terms attached for review. I forwarded the document to Catherine before opening it myself, professional caution overriding curiosity. When I did review the proposed terms, the reason for Nathan's sudden cooperation became immediately clear. He was conceding nearly everything. The proposal granted me the house with its full equity, all retirement accounts in my name, which he had legally never been able to touch anyway, and released me from any joint debts, which would be solely his responsibility. In exchange, he requested only his personal possessions, his vehicle, and a complete severance of any financial connections. Catherine called within minutes of receiving the document. "This is essentially a complete capitulation," she observed, the surprise evident even in her professionally measured tone. "He's walking away from substantial assets he would legally be entitled to contest. He wants a clean break before things get worse with crypto fusion and the investigation," I concluded. "This removes any financial connection between us and eliminates the need for prolonged court proceedings where additional details might emerge." "Most likely," Catherine agreed. "From a purely financial perspective, this settlement heavily favors you. However, I'm concerned about potential implications regarding criminal liability. By accepting these terms, you could inadvertently appear to be benefiting from activities currently under investigation." She proposed a strategy: accept the general framework, but adjust specific terms to ensure clean separation from any potentially tainted assets. We would proceed with tomorrow's court date as scheduled, presenting the modified agreement for judicial approval. When I shared this development with Amanda that evening, her initial reaction mirrored mine: suspicion mixed with cautious relief. "It's almost too perfect," she observed, reviewing the proposed terms. "Nathan voluntarily walking away from assets. He spent months trying to leverage or hide." "Fear is a powerful motivator," I replied. "Whatever he's involved with through crypto fusion clearly frightens him more than the prospect of starting over financially." "Or he's planning something else entirely," Amanda suggested, ever the skeptic. "Maybe this apparent surrender is just another maneuver." I considered this possibility, but the evidence suggested otherwise. Nathan's text messages had grown increasingly desperate. His attorney's communication was formal but urgent, and the complete capitulation on financial terms indicated genuine pressure beyond our marital dissolution. "I think he's truly trying to extricate himself," I concluded. "From crypto fusion, from our marriage, from the financial entanglements he created. This settlement offers him the cleanest exit possible, even if it's financially disadvantageous." The court date arrived with unexpected calm. After weeks of escalating drama, the actual divorce proceeding felt almost anticlimactic. Nathan arrived, with Jeffries, nodding briefly in acknowledgement but maintaining his distance in the courthouse hallway. He looked haggard, the polished confidence that had once been his defining characteristic now visibly eroded. Inside the courtroom, our respective attorneys presented the negotiated settlement agreement to the judge, who reviewed it with professional thoroughness. "This distribution heavily favors the petitioner," he observed, glancing between Nathan and me. "Mr. Chen, you understand you're entitled to contest these terms?" Jeffries spoke for him. "My client understands, Your Honor. He wishes to expedite the dissolution and accepts the terms as presented." The judge studied Nathan for a moment longer before continuing through the standard questions, ensuring both parties entered the agreement voluntarily and with full understanding. When the final declaration of dissolution was pronounced, I expected to feel something momentous, triumph, perhaps, or at least vindication. Instead, what washed over me was simply relief. Not joy or victory, just the quiet recognition that one chapter had officially closed, allowing the next to begin. As we gathered our documents and prepared to leave, Nathan approached me directly for the first time that day. Jeffries hovered nearby, clearly uncomfortable with the unplanned interaction. "It's done," Nathan said quietly, his expression unreadable. "You got what you wanted." "I wanted a partnership based on mutual respect," I corrected him, maintaining professional composure in the public space. "This was just the necessary conclusion once that proved impossible." He glanced toward where Catherine and Amanda waited by the courtroom door. "They've contacted Melissa too, you know, the investigators. Apparently my emails mentioned her enough to warrant an interview. The information wasn't particularly relevant to me, but I recognized the admission for what it was, Nathan's acknowledgement that his carefully constructed exit strategy had collapsed entirely. I hope you find what you're looking for, I said finally, meaning it despite everything. 15 years together had left at least some residue of caring, even amidst the betrayal and deceit. They're watching me, he replied, voice dropping lower. Crypto fusion. I can't access the money I promised them, and they blame me for the investigation. Understanding dawned. That's why you conceded everything in the settlement. You're planning to leave town. Nathan's silence confirmed my assessment. His capitulation hadn't been solely about avoiding prolonged legal proceedings. It was about eliminating attachments that would complicate a quick departure. You should tell Detective Martinez, I advised. They can help with protection if you cooperate fully. Jeffries stepped forward then, placing a hand on Nathan's arm. We should go. The car is waiting. Nathan held my gaze for a moment longer. For what it's worth, I didn't know what crypto fusion really was when I got involved. I thought it was just another investment opportunity. But you knew what you were doing with our finances, I reminded him. And with Melissa. Those choices were made with complete awareness. He nodded once, accepting this truth without argument. Goodbye, Rebecca. I watched him walk away with Jeffries, their figures receding down the courthouse hallway. Nathan smaller somehow, diminished by the collapse of his carefully constructed illusions. Despite everything, a flicker of sadness surfaced, not for the marriage we'd lost, but for the potential it had never fulfilled. Catherine approached as they disappeared around a corner. It's official. You are now legally divorced with a settlement that secures your financial future. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied, the formal acknowledgement feeling necessary despite the circumstances. What happens with the crypto fusion investigation now? That continues independently, she explained as we walked toward the exit. Your financial separation is complete, which provides protection from any future developments in that case. Martinez believes Nathan was a participant rather than an organizer, but his level of knowledge and involvement will determine any potential charges. Ooh. Outside, morning sunlight bathed the courthouse steps in warm light. Amanda waited by her car, offering a supportive smile as we approached. Freedom looks good on you, she observed, studying my expression. I smiled, acknowledging the truth in her assessment. Despite the stress and uncertainty of recent weeks, an undeniable lightness had settled over me with the final dissolution of my marriage to Nathan. Not because I was celebrating the end of our relationship, but because I was finally free of the constant accommodation it had required. Let's go to Meridian, I suggested. I have client meetings this afternoon. Amanda raised an eyebrow. You're going straight back to work after finalizing your divorce? That's completely on brand, actually. Life continues, I said, simply. And I have portfolios to manage. The normalcy of returning to work felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. For too long, Nathan's drama had dominated my attention, consuming mental and emotional resources that could have been directed elsewhere. No more. At Meridian, Daniel met me in the lobby, his expression a careful mix of professional support and personal concern. Everything proceed as expected? He asked as we rode the elevator to our floor. Smooth and final, I confirmed. Settlement approved, decree granted. He nodded, clearly relieved. Security protocols will remain in place until the crypto fusion situation is fully resolved. In the meantime, the Hamilton family has requested a portfolio review next week. They specifically asked for you to lead it. The simple statement, clients requesting my expertise by name, provided unexpected affirmation. While my personal life had been unraveling, my professional value remained not just intact, but increasingly recognized. I'll prepare a comprehensive analysis, I assured him as we reached our floor. Their daughter's medical treatment timeline might affect our recommended allocation strategy. And that, Daniel remarked, gesturing toward my immediate shift to professional considerations, is exactly why they asked for you. Your ability to see both numbers and needs simultaneously. The compliment registered differently than it might have months earlier. Before discovering Nathan's betrayal, I might have minimized it, deflected the acknowledgement, or internally questioned whether I truly deserved such recognition. Now, I simply accepted it as an accurate assessment of value I knew I provided. Thank you, I replied, straightforward and confident. I'll have the preliminary analysis ready by Friday. The remainder of the day passed in welcomed professional routine: client calls, portfolio reviews, strategy discussions with my team. The juxtaposition between the morning's legal proceedings and the afternoon's financial analysis might have seemed jarring, but instead felt like appropriate balance. Both represented aspects of reclaiming control over my life's direction. That evening, as I prepared to return to Elena's condo for one final night before moving back to my house, Catherine called with unexpected news. Nathan's gone, she stated, without preamble. Failed to appear for a scheduled interview with Martinez this afternoon. His attorney claims no knowledge of his whereabouts, but the timing suggests planned departure rather than something more concerning. I absorbed this information with surprising equanimity. He mentioned they were watching him, crypto fusion. I suggested he speak with Martinez about protection. Apparently he chose a different solution, Catherine observed. Martinez has issued a material witness warrant, but given the head start and Nathan's access to cash, they're not optimistic about immediate location. After hanging up, I considered calling Amanda to share this development, but decided against it. Nathan's disappearance marked yet another chapter closing. One I hadn't anticipated, but perhaps should have. His pattern had always been the same: create problems, then escape rather than resolve them. Our marriage had simply been his longest-running variation on that theme. 3 days later, I moved back into my house, our house now solely mine under the divorce settlement. The place felt simultaneously familiar and strange, like returning to a childhood home after years away. Same spaces, different context. I spent that first weekend reclaiming rooms that had subtly shifted under Nathan's influence over the years. The home office he had gradually taken over returned to its original purpose, hosting my professional reference materials and financial planning documents. The guest room he had filled with abandoned hobby equipment was cleared, painted, and transformed into a personal reading retreat. The kitchen was reorganized to my preferences rather than maintaining the arbitrary system Nathan had insisted was more efficient. Each small change represented not just practical preference, but symbolic reclamation. This space was now truly mine, not a jointly navigated compromise perpetually tilted toward Nathan's priorities. 6 weeks after the divorce was finalized, Daniel called me into his office for an unexpected meeting. I arrived with notebook in hand, assuming we would discuss the expanded Hamilton portfolio, or perhaps the new client referrals that had been increasing since our successful restructuring strategy. Instead, I found Richard Porter, the firm's founding partner, seated beside Daniel, both men with expressions of contained excitement that immediately piqued my curiosity. "Rebecca," Richard began after preliminary greetings, "I'll get straight to the point. We're establishing a new division focused specifically on wealth protection and strategic restructuring for high-net-worth clients facing major life transitions, divorce, inheritance, business liquidation, and similar scenarios." Daniel continued seamlessly. "Your work with the Hamilton family demonstrated exactly the approach we want this division to embody. Technical expertise combined with emotional intelligence and practical implementation." Richard leaned forward, slightly. "We'd like you to develop and lead this division as managing director. It would mean building a specialized team, creating proprietary analysis frameworks, and establishing Meridian as the go-to firm for complex financial transitions." The offer stunned me momentarily. Not just a promotion, but essentially the creation of a division tailored to my specific strengths, with autonomy to shape its development. The timing is intentional, Daniel added with characteristic directness. We've been considering this strategic direction for months, but waited until your personal situation stabilized. Not out of concern for your capabilities during the divorce, you've more than demonstrated your professional focus, but to ensure you had capacity to take on something of this magnitude. The consideration behind their timing touched me unexpectedly. Unlike Nathan, who had seen my professional success primarily as a resource to leverage for his own purposes, my colleagues recognized its intrinsic value and sought to nurture rather than exploit it. I'm honored, I replied, genuinely moved by the opportunity. And very interested. I'd like to review the structural details and compensation package, of course, but conceptually, this aligns perfectly with where I believe financial services should be heading. We spent the next hour outlining preliminary vision and implementation plans, my mind already racing with possibilities for this new venture. By the time I returned to my office, a path had crystallized before me. Not just professional advancement, but the chance to help others navigate the very financial transitions I had recently experienced myself. Amanda's reaction when I shared the news over dinner that evening was unrestrained enthusiasm. Managing Director, your own division. This is exactly the recognition you deserve. It's an incredible opportunity, I agreed, still processing the magnitude of the advancement. And honestly, I'm not sure it would have happened if I hadn't gone through the divorce. Amanda's expression turned quizzical. What do you mean? I considered how to articulate the connection I sensed between my personal upheaval and professional evolution. Before discovering Nathan's betrayal, I had become accustomed to minimizing my financial expertise at home to accommodate his ego. That habit was subtle but pervasive, occasionally bleeding into how I presented myself professionally. You were never anything but confident at work, Amanda objected. Confident in execution, yes, I acknowledged, but perhaps less assertive than I could have been about advancement, about claiming recognition for my contributions. Part of me had internalized Nathan's narrative, that my skills were valuable primarily as support for others' ambitions, rather than as the foundation for my own. Understanding dawned in Amanda's expression. And when you stopped managing his financial chaos, I redirected that energy toward my own potential, I completed. Exactly. The realization wasn't entirely new, but articulating it aloud crystallized its significance. Nathan's betrayal, painful as it had been, had ultimately forced me to recognize patterns of diminishment I had accepted for years. In removing myself from those patterns, I had reclaimed not just financial assets, but personal agency and professional ambition. 3 months after accepting the managing director position, I received an unexpected email from a name I didn't immediately recognize: Melissa Jenkins, Nathan's former mistress, now apparently reaching out directly. My finger hovered over the delete button before curiosity prevailed. The message was brief but startling. I believe Nathan is back in the country. Thought you should know for security reasons. He contacted me last week seeking money. I declined and notified the investigator handling the crypto fusion case. Stay safe. I forwarded the message to Martinez before allowing myself to fully process its implications. Nathan had fled rather than face questioning, likely using whatever cash reserves he had managed to hide before our divorce. Those resources had apparently been depleted more quickly than he anticipated, driving him back to familiar territory despite the risks. Martinez called within the hour. We're following up on this information, he confirmed. Multiple agencies are involved given the interstate and potentially international elements. Your security should remain a priority, though we don't believe you're his primary target. Financial resources are, I concluded, which is why he contacted Melissa rather than attempting to approach me directly. Most likely, Martinez agreed. Still, standard precautions are advisable. We'll increase patrol frequency near your residence and workplace. After our call, I sat in my home office, surrounded by the organized financial documents that represented my reclaimed independence, considering this unexpected development. Nathan's return, if Melissa's information proved accurate, didn't frighten me as it might have months earlier. The legal barriers protecting my assets were solid, my professional position stronger than ever, my personal boundaries clearly established. Whatever desperation had driven Nathan back to familiar territory despite legal jeopardy, it represented his continued pattern rather than any threat to the life I had rebuilt. His choices remained his responsibility, his consequences his alone, to bear. That evening, as summer twilight lingered over my backyard garden, another space I had reclaimed and reshaped in recent months, I reviewed financial projections for my new division. The numbers told a story of strategic growth, carefully managed, risk and substantial returns, not just financially, but in client well-being and long-term security. It was, I realized, precisely the approach I had always taken with my personal finances, the methodology Nathan had simultaneously benefited from and dismissed as overly cautious. The irony wasn't lost on me. The very expertise he had minimized had become the foundation not just for my continued security after his betrayal, but for my professional advancement beyond anything we had discussed during our marriage. My phone chimed with a message from Daniel. Hamilton granddaughter's college fund structure approved by tax counsel. Implementation can proceed. Well done. The simple acknowledgement confirmed another successful strategy, another family whose financial future was more secure because of my specific expertise. While Nathan had been planning to leverage my professional skills without my knowledge, I had been applying them intentionally to benefit others while building my own security. As darkness finally settled over the garden, I closed my laptop and allowed myself a moment of quiet reflection. The path from discovering Nathan's betrayal to this present moment hadn't been straightforward or painless. There had been genuine grief for the relationship I had believed in, fear during the crypto fusion revelations, and moments of doubt during the divorce proceedings. But throughout that journey, each step toward reclaiming my financial independence had simultaneously been a step toward reclaiming something deeper, my recognition of my own worth, not just as measured in accounts and assets, but in expertise, judgment, and vision. Nathan had called me the practical one, while positioning himself as the visionary, never recognizing that practical execution without substantive vision is merely maintenance, while vision without practical implementation remains forever unrealized potential. In separating from him, I had finally united both qualities within my own life direction. Whatever happened with Nathan now, whether he faced legal consequences for his involvement with crypto fusion or managed yet another escape, was no longer my concern. The financial security I had established wasn't dependent on his choices or his future. It was built on foundations entirely my own, just as it should have been all along. As I prepared for bed that night, I noticed the diamond earrings I had purchased for myself to celebrate my promotion, catching the soft lamplight on my dresser. Unlike the diamond necklace Nathan had bought for Melissa, the purchase that had first alerted me to his betrayal. These represented no empty promises or hidden agendas. They were simply a tangible acknowledgement of professional accomplishment and personal growth, clear and honest in their significance. I smiled at the symmetry. What had begun with a diamond purchased through deception had culminated in diamonds representing truth. The journey between those points had transformed not just my financial situation, but my fundamental understanding of my own worth. A value that, unlike market investments, would never depreciate or depend on someone else's validation again. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.